Hi, my name is Cindi Rang with the Fabric Patch in Ephrata, Washington, and this is my episode of the 12 Days of Quiltmas. Okay, if you are new to our channel, this is Maisie. Maisie is my granddaughter, and we have a shop in central Washington State. We've been here for 24 years. It's a 5,000 square foot shop with about 10,000 bolts, and we have a busy YouTube channel. Most of the people who watch us on our YouTube channel are watching us to be able to watch Miss Maisie. She will be a year old on December 22nd. And we do box openings to show everything brand new in the shop on Sunday afternoons at 12:30. I'm going to put her, but you're going to hear her in the background, which is why it was important for you to see her. She tears up the shop constantly. Anyway, we do box openings on Sunday afternoons at 12:30 and Wednesday nights at 5 o'clock. We also do a Fabric Chat where we just have coffee with friends and talk about nothing on Wednesday mornings at 8:30, and then we have lots of tutorials and classes and blocks of the month. We have over 450 videos on our channel, and I was really excited to be a part of Quiltmas. We will link below if you have just ventured in and this is your first opportunity to see what Quiltmas is. We have a video linked below that explains it. There are 12 different creators that got together and decided to make some fun projects, and then all of the projects are going to be given away. So you have an opportunity to win prizes, and your prizes consist of the notions that we're featuring and also the projects that we're actually making. And when we started doing it, the deal was we were supposed to find the ugliest Christmas fabric we could, and then we were supposed to cut it all up, and each one of us will send a fat quarter to the other 11 that are participating, and then we were supposed to decide what we were going to make with it. And then each one of us, every day for 12 days, you'll see what all of us did with basically the same ugly fabric. So it's been a really fun project, and it's been really fun to get to know the other creators. And again, we'll link that, the information, so you can find all of those other creators, and maybe you'll find some other people that you'll like to watch. So first, let me go ahead and show you the fabric that I got. Okay, these are the 12 fabrics, and you can see not all are pretty, but it is kind of funny because I think some of them are really, really pretty. So when you watch everybody else's episode, they're going to talk about the fabric they got and then also the fabric that they provided and why they chose it. So if you just look through here, I feel like some of these I can understand why they would be difficult to use. Some I think are just kind of nice little background blenders. This one I think is beautiful, has a little bit of gold in it. That one was kind of fun. I love Vintage Santa. This is a gorgeous piece of fabric. I am pretty sure I have lots of this in my stash, and I've used it many times before. Hanukkah, that one would be kind of hard. This is the gem that I gave to everyone. Not because I think it's necessarily hideous, but because I think it would be really difficult to use. And that's why I sent it, is because I thought, what are you gonna do with that? All right, so in the rules, we have to use a recognizable piece of all 12 of these fabrics, and we can go ahead and add other pieces if we want to. So these are the pieces that I'm adding. And the reason that I chose these, if you take a look at these, I think I'm going to also add a background piece, but I'm not sure yet. I do know what I'm going to make, and if you watch to the end, you'll see what it is. But if you look at these, many of these are a little bit tonal. They have a little bit of a gray scale to them, and so that's why the pieces that I picked are all also a little bit tonal. What I am going to do is I'm going to do a pixelated quilt using a product that I really, really like. And so I'm going to start by cutting all of these into 1.5 inch squares. Okay, so the only way that I'm going to cut a whole bunch of 1.5 inch squares would be with my shape cut ruler. If you're not familiar with this, we can link. We have a shape cut tutorial on how to use this, but of course all you're doing is you're just going to cut 1.5 inch strips. Everything is marked at the bottom, so I know that I'm cutting the 1.5, 3, 4.5, 6, 7.5, and then I'm going to stop at the 9, and then pull that one off, pull off my little clean edge here, turn this around, I don't have to move anything, and then I'm going to do the same thing, cut off this 0, which cleans off my edge, cut at the 1.5, the 3, 4.5, 6, 7.5, and 9. And then clean off my edges, throw those pieces away, and what I have are these perfect stacks of perfect 1.5 inch squares. So then once I do this, I have to keep them all separate. And a nice little piecing palette is my muffin tin. And so I'm just going to cut all of these and stack these all up, and then I'll show you the next step. Okay, here's my last ones, but I just want to show that what's kind of fun about pixelations is that when you do cut these into smaller pieces, what happens is you almost can't tell that it's the same fabric depending upon what square you pick. So when I show you the pattern I'm going to do, you'll notice this again, that it might be hard to recognize some of these. So I have all 12 of my fabrics cut up, at least started. And then the only other thing I'm going to do is cut up the other pieces that are going to go with it, and then I'll show you the next step. So here are my pieces, and I want to tell you that between the time that I've cut it and I've been playing, I have made a few decisions. One thing is all of those other blues and blacks and other colors that I showed you, I pared that down. The only other added pieces that I added is this particular green, this red, this gold, and then I did these kind of backgroundy pieces. The other thing that happened is I ran out of some fabric because I mentioned that I'm making a pixelated quilt, which I'll show you in a minute. And in fact, my secret word is pixel. Because that's what I'm doing is I am making little squares of color to create an image. So what happens, let me just show you something for a second, is that when I cut this one into 1.5 inch squares, I was getting some pieces that were just sort of this soft blue and some pieces that were great big Santas. And so you can see that I could almost separate out different colors. Same thing with this particular fabric. Sometimes I had a purple tree in it, sometimes I didn't. This one was really interesting because for most of this I made the mistake of deciding that I wanted to stick with just kind of the gold leaf color, and I ran out. A fat quarter wasn't enough. Then going to my shop to try to find a piece that was close to that was very difficult. Unfortunately, this was the closest thing that I could find, which is not close at all, but I'm going to show you how that works also. The hardest piece that I found that was the most difficult to use actually was this one. And so when I did use this, I'll show you, I used it where you couldn't really see all of these in here, and you could see the black, and I'll show you in the quilt where we use that, because again, as you're cutting things up into squares, you can see where that looks very, very different than something like that, right? By the time you've sewn your 1/4 inch seam all the way around it, those will look very, very different. And interestingly, the other one that gave me a huge challenge was just as I thought it would, was this nasty little guy, which I know, and I'll show you how I used him. Anyway, so this was my palette, my paint palette, and let's just show you what happens. So this is the pixelated process, and the product that I use is this stuff. Let me just kind of show you how this works. This is a product by 10 Sisters. We sell it on our website, and it's a grid. And so what happens is one side is just sort of soft and the other side is fusible, and it has this little grid. and the grit, every single piece is exactly the same, where it's 9 squares across by 14 squares long. And what you do is you cut up either your 1.5, or you might do 1-inch squares or 2.5-inch squares, depending upon the finished size. So this is an example of the 1/2-inch finished. This is just a little mug rug that I made. You can see that that's teeny tiny little piecing, and you'll see, I'm going to show you the process by the way that you do this. And for me to sew something this teeny tiny little pieces, this is the only way that I would do it. It's actually called Easy Piecing Grid, is actually the specific name for it. And this one is the one that would be the teeny tiny ones, where we start with 1.5 inches, which is what I'm using. This one is where you're starting with 1 inch, which is going to end up being a 1/2-inch finished, which is the size of this one. And this one is 1 full panel, so this is 9 by 14. Carmen has many books that are available that support her piecing grid, and also in the center of every book she gives full directions exactly how to do it, and then she gives you these charts. This is the one that I'm doing. I'm making this, and you can decide if you want to do the 1-inch square, the 1.5-inch square, or the 2-inch square, exactly how much fabric you need. And then of course it tells you that if you're doing the 1-inch finished and you make this, you're going to end up with something that is 39 by 41. If you do a 1.5-inch finished square, it's going to end up being 58 by 67. Or if you do the 2-inch finished, you would end up with a 78 by 82, and that's before you put any borders on. So this is what I decided to do. And these are the panels. So you can see where this is 9 by 14, 9 by 14. So I just had to have all of these panels. And then this one was 1 panel that I cut into 3 different pieces, because there's 3 across, 3 across, and 3 across. And the other funny thing just to mention is that the other thing that happened down here is I cut off 1, because if you count this one is only 13 squares long by 9 across. So anyway, this is what I was working on, and it's basically just like a little puzzle. All you do is I have cut up all of my palette pieces, my paint chip pieces, basically, my little pixels. And this one was my main red piece. And then I just had to decide how I was going to put all of these in to make kind of this really cool, colorful quilt. And so what I did is using this and kind of lining up, really the only thing that I followed in terms of a pattern was I went ahead and kept the red right where it was supposed to go. And what I did is I laid out 2 panels at a time, and did these 2, then did these 2, sewed them all together. And I'm going to show you that process. Right now, the 2 that I have out are the last 2. So let me show you what this looks like. So this is the first step, is laying out your easy piecing grid and then kind of getting your bearings. And so you can see that that's what I did, is I put all of my little crosswise red pieces, and then I just sort of decided how I was going to use them. And it's kind of fun because this piece was this one, and you can see that sometimes I just cut it into just the way that you saw me cut. Sometimes I ended up with pieces that looked like this, that had this fun little red stripe and the little dog on it. And then other times I ended up with this. Look how cool that is. And what was the other one? This was the other one. This particular fabric, sometimes it ended up with none of the white flowers, and other times it ended up with big parts of the white flowers in it. This was the one that I had a hard time with, and I'll show you some of the others when we show you the quilt up on the wall. This was the other one. Here you can see that this piece, there's no purple in it. This is the exact same fabric with the purple tree all the way in it. So using the pixels to be able to create your image and, move around using lights and darks, it makes it kind of fun. So once you've made your decision using your paint palette, essentially, then it's time to press it down. All right, I went ahead and slid my ironing mat underneath here. I'm going to tell you, though, that normally I have these laid out on my ironing board so that I don't have to move them a second time. When you place your pieces, the idea is to line up in one corner, whichever corner you'd like. You don't have to put it right in the center if you don't want to. You have enough room, and you'll see when we go to piece it what happens. But you're just going to put right side down, line it up in that square, one more, and then once you have everything where it goes, just do a little double check, make sure that you have it the way that you like it. And at first, really, you can just go ahead and take your iron and you can just, without dragging your iron, just kind of move it around and get everything kind of set. But what happens is you really have to get those edges too, and that's why the notion that I'm demonstrating and giving away is the pressing cloth. I use a pressing cloth anyway, anytime I'm using any kind of a fusible web product. It's just a whole lot easier than messing with a dirty iron. If something happens and you do get something kind of nasty on your iron, you always want to make sure that you have some iron clean available. It looks like this, and the way that you use it is that you take one of these out. It sort of looks like a dryer sheet, and then the way that you use it is you just put it on the edge of your, let me fold this up. You put it on the edge of your mat, and you just run it along the edge of your iron, and it just cleans off all of the dirty spots on your iron. I usually have a paper towel around, but just to dry it off, but it doesn't leave really any other kind of residue. So you just fuse all of this down. After you've pressed it all, if you find that something has skewed just a little bit, it's totally not going to matter. You'll see that in just a second. Your other option is that while it's still hot, usually you can lift it just a little bit or reheat it and reposition it. But that's why really it's a better idea just to go ahead and kind of move your iron around first and kind of make sure that everything is nice and secure. That tiny little bit of fusible in there is not going to interact with your iron because you're off of it just a little bit. But over along the edges, you do want to make sure and get your edges on. And that's and the reason for that I'm going to show you, because once we've got this whole thing pressed down, we're going to go to the sewing machine. Okay, here's my fused piece. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to sew my seams. And so it's really just the same idea as if you were sewing all of these pieces, but it's like this big hand that's holding this whole grid for you. So all I have to do is just flip it over. See, it folds over perfectly. I've just got my 1/4 inch foot on. I don't have to have any other kind of a specialty needle, and I'm just going to go ahead and sew this seam. Once I've done that, I open this up. Now all I'm going to do is fold the next one. And each time it folds exactly the way that it's supposed to. All of my rows have been sewn, and so now, and again, imagine how much faster that was than holding all of those separately. And now I just have to do the other row, but first I just clip these seams. So I just use whatever your favorite scissor is that will cut clear to the end, and all I'm going to do is right here in this little, from the edge to the seam, on all of these little intersections, I'm just going to snip. Okay, I just want to mention this little snipping step is not negotiable. You have to do this step or else you will not be happy with it. I'll show you why in a second. And the other thing is that you don't want to cut through that seam. Make sure that you really are just cutting through up to that seam, and you'll see you'll create a little muscle memory, and that'll be easy. Now, the fact that this is not negotiable, the really good news is that you do not have to press. And I am somebody that always presses. Pressing is one of those very specific quilting rules, something that we don't skip. But in this particular case, you really don't have to, because what's going to happen is now you're going to flip this over. Oh, and remember when I told you that you want to press clear to the edge? This is why those little flippies, I didn't do a great job on that end. So now what's going to happen is I'm going to take this and flip this over, and I'm going to sew this other seam, and you'll see this is why that little clipping step can't be skipped, because that's what gives me that opportunity to nestle all of those seams. And because it lays so flat, that's the only reason we don't have to press. And afterwards, it takes a little bit of time to press, and I'll show you that at the end. So I'm going to go ahead now, and I'm just going to show you this first one, and then I'm going to sew all of these seams. And we're just going to do it exactly the same way, our 1/4 inch seam allowance. And as we go, it's helpful to have some sort of a little stiletto so that you are sure that you've got your seams all nestled in there. And because of the interfacing, it automatically does that nestling for you. So you'll see at the end here, my points come out absolutely perfect, and I haven't done anything to work at it at all. I'm going to show you guys another one because Brianna said my hand was in the way the entire time. So this will seem a little bit bulky. Just keep it all out of the way, but it lays perfectly flat and super simple, and you can see that that interfacing creates that nestling really easy. All you want to do is just make sure that one's going one way and one's going the other way. So I'll try to keep my fingers out of the way here. And I'm just going to keep sewing. I've sewn the 14 lateral seams. Now I'm going to sew the other 9 seams, nestling as I go. And I'll show you this when I'm done. All right, a little bit of pressing, and that is how you sew 126 pieces all together in just a few minutes. It's really the only way to do it. This press is nice and flat, presses perfectly. All of my seams are exactly where they're supposed to be. If you want to feel free to zoom right on in. I am not nervous about it at all because it all lines up just right. And the other questions that some people have is, well, what about all of that interfacing on the back? You absolutely don't notice it. It's not any different from adding all of that batting that you have inside your quilt. It doesn't matter. It doesn't feel stiff in any way. It won't when you're done. So you can see that what I have here is I have my first 4 panels on the top, and here's that little section that I was talking about that's just 3 across by my 14. I have these 2 sewn together. Here's the one that I just did. And so what I'll do is I'm going to keep working on my panels. For my particular project, I have 4 more across the bottom and 2 more little end pieces to do. I want to just show you, since it's all about pixelations and pixel pieces, I want to show you just for fun some of these. So this was that other one, and the one with the little Scotty dogs, and see where I specifically used just pieces that had the little red on it. Here is a chunk of Santa. Here is
a nutcracker.
Yeah,
he's creepy.
He's so creepy. So creepy. Over here, so let me see. So this was one of that ball that I said was sort of hard to use. But look over here. This is the same fabric where I used mostly just the black part of it. And you can only see little bits of those balls on the other edge. So, and then here, can you tell what this one is? Any guesses?
He's Nutcracker too, isn't
That is Nutcracker legs.
he? He looks way better that way.
Yeah, right. It's way better that way. So it's a fun way just to go ahead and, use those pieces. And if this were something I were planning out, I probably would choose my colors a little bit differently. But I think this has been kind of fun just to see how they all play together. I'm excited to get it done. I'm going to keep working on this. I have to make some decisions about borders, and then I'm going to quilt it, and then I'm going to show you. Sewing this together is no big deal. It's really just sewing blocks together and sewing the borders on. But I also am going to gather a couple of books because this is the funnest kid project. All you have to do is cut up the squares for them, let them do their little puzzle. You saw how easy it was. They can even sew those panels together by themselves. You might want to press depending upon how old they are, but it's pretty fun, and she has some really good supportive books for kids. So I'm going to sew a little bit, and I'll see you in a few minutes. All right, and here it is, all done. I have all of the panels put together. I have it quilted. I ended up putting a couple borders on it. And it ended up being about 64 by 64. And if you look, again, some of the ones that I pointed out, you can see the uglies, but they all kind of go together. And it is certainly possible that I could have done it in 2.5-inch squares and made it king size. But for me, I really like the 1-inch finished because as a quilter, just that alone is impressive. Oops, sorry. We have...
My little toy.
We have... a helper.
Lizzie's coming to help distract.
Sorry. It's chaos. It's chaos here all the time. So anyway, that's why I chose the 1-inch finish, and I choose it often because again, it's just so easy to piece together. And I wanted to show you, this is the one that we often have hanging in the shop. Exact same thing, done the same way with pretty fabrics. So it doesn't always have to be completed with ugly fabrics. And again, you can make it the size that you'd like. So I just want to show a couple things just to finish this up. Again, we are drawing for this. Somebody will win this. Make sure that you watch all 12 videos, find our little secret word and everybody else's secret word. And then if you want to make this yourself, I showed you the book that I used. There's several other books that she has, but this was the one that I wanted to show you that works really well for kids. All of the books have the directions right in the inside, but look at this. This is just 6 panels. You can make it any size you want to. This one too, just 6 panels. There's some really cute ones that are kind of fun for somebody little just to go ahead and put a puzzle together, iron it, then sew it. You just really can't mess up. The notion that we're drawing for is, of course, the pressing cloth and some panels. You can buy the panels individually. One other thing I wanted to mention is that one of our most popular kits is the Minecraft kit. It comes with the 8 panels and all of the directions. You just have to choose if you want 2-inch finished, 1-inch finished, 1.5-inch finished. So anyway, fabricpatch.net is our website, and thank you so much for watching our version of Quiltmas, and let's see, tomorrow is day 5. Thank you for watching our video. We invite you to leave a comment, hit the like button, or better yet, subscribe to our channel so you never miss an episode. You can also visit our Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or Pinterest pages, or find all of those things and our online store at fabricpatch.net.